Okay. So welcome to everybody. So I'm Liz Stewart, so I'm Chief Executive of Scotland's Garden Scheme, and I think I know everybody here. But I'd like to introduce, if you haven't met her, the wonderful Jessica Taylor, who's there on screen. Jessica is, as I'm sure you know, is our communications manager and does a most amazing job of our social media and of lots of other things as well. But I'm really delighted to welcome our trainer today, Anna Marie Taylor. So you'll all have seen the description that we shared, but Anna Marie is an expert digital marketing consultant. So she runs her own agency, but really knows a lot more than we do about social media, and is going to give us just a small part of her knowledge and share her insights. Into, well, as it says, creating social media that hooks and engages, but some of the tips and tricks and some really interesting facts about it as well. So I hope you find it useful. Please, if you've got questions, pop them in the chat. Jess will keep an eye on that, and we will pick those up at the end. So I'm going to mute myself, and then I'm going to pass you over to Anna Marie.
Thanks, Liz, and really nice to meet everybody. I was in awe of the gardens when I was pulling together the slides for this presentation. They all look absolutely beautiful, particularly in the sunshine and all the green and the lush flowers and the bees and things flying about. So it's actually been a really nice presentation to be able to pull together. But as Liz says, what we're going to talk about today is really creating social media that hooks and engages. So I work with lots of different businesses, predominantly sort of small startups, SME type businesses, charities, social enterprises. And what a lot of people do is they just take a piece of video content, take a photograph, think to themselves, oh, that would be quite nice for social media, but not really thinking about the purpose and what you're trying to do with that particular piece of content. So we're going to really think about how do we hook in our customers and engage them to do something on the back of it. You'll hear me talk today a lot about the algorithms. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to play the Facebook and Instagram games. There's a lot of activity that happens when we're pulling together our social media, and we need to be aware of what's the best practice and how do we get the most out of the channels. So that's what we'll talk about today. As Liz says, we'll answer all your questions at the end. A little bit about me. I'm one of these traditional marketing people. So I started my career in marketing about 38 years ago, which just makes me feel so old. I'm sure I'm still 21. And I went into marketing when marketing was you put an advert in the Herald or the Scotsman or one of the local press, and you kept your fingers crossed and you hoped for the best. So we used to spend big budgets on marketing, and actually we never really got much out of it at the end of the day, apart from brand awareness. Now we're really lucky because digital marketing has totally transformed the whole process of marketing and communications. And things like social media, the best part of it is I can have a look at a campaign. So I can create 5 or 6 pieces of content, put it out with a premise of what I'm going to try and do, which is maybe increase my followers or get more shares or whatever it is I'm trying to do. And I can track the statistics and see whether it works or not. So marketing has moved quite a lot, and actually it's become a lot more favorable. So as Liz says, I run my own marketing consultancy. I work a lot with business gateways up and down across the country, and social media is my sort of sweet spot, I would say. So what are we going to look at today? We've got an hour, and then we've got some questions at the end, but we're going to look at why social media? So why should we be on social media in the first place, and what's the whole purpose of it? So a bit of taking it back to basics, because I think when you go back and have a look at that, it helps going forward. Then we're going to focus quite a bit of the time on what makes good content for social media, the sort of a bit of the do's and the don'ts, and where we should be focusing our time and our effort. Then we're gonna look at Facebook and Instagram, because they're the 2 channels that Scotland's Gardens focus on, and then a few of the tools that I use on a day-to-day basis when I'm creating social media for my clients or when I'm recommending it to some of my Business Gateway colleagues. So we need to think about social media as a conversation. It's not a platform that we're talking at people. So if we're selling to people all the time, we're never going to get the type of engagement that we really, really want. we want to think like our customers. So one of the premises and the sort of the ground roots of marketing is putting yourself in the shoes of your customers. I was out with a client yesterday and we were talking about rebranding and we were thinking about what do our customers want. And the messaging at the start of the meeting became totally different by the time we got to the end of the meeting because we were really thinking about the challenges and the pinch points of those particular customers. So when we're developing social media, we want to think like our customers and find the things that makes them want to chat to you online. So you're all garden buffs. You're really into your plants and your flowers and what blooms at what time of the year. But the people that come to visit your gardens may not be those type of people. They're maybe looking for a nice day out somewhere night, somewhere in their own locality or potentially somewhere that they're on holiday that they want to go and visit the gardens when they're there. So thinking like your customers is the way we want to be positioning ourselves so our social media becomes richer. Oops. Why does social media matter? So this is a bit of the basics. We develop social media because we're trying to build brand awareness. So we're trying to raise the profile of your organization to as wide an audience as possible. But we also want to have a really good reputation. And it's a reputation to be something. So we want to be the experts on the whole Scotland's garden scenes. If that's how you want to be positioned, that's one of the sort of goals that you would set when you're creating your social media. We're probably doing it to enhance customer engagement and to build relationships. So when we're selling or talking at people all the time on our social media, you're not building a relationship with them. You're just sharing information with them all the time. What we want to try and do with our social media is get those people talking to us, saving our posts, tagging other people into the content, bringing people into the conversations and building relationships with these people. And we need to do that effectively. We're potentially doing it because we want to drive people to something on our website. So there might be a downloadable resource on the website, or it might be promoting a new garden that's opening up, or maybe an event that you're running. So we're pushing people to a particular thing because we want them to do something. We classify that as our call to action. What do we want somebody to do when they've read our social media post? We also, as what you guys are trying to do is nurture this community of loyal customers. So people that come back time and time again because they want to know, they want to read new posts, they want to see new videos, they want to find out new top tips, they want to engage with new people that are putting out different content. And what that does is that fosters brand loyalty and it ensures that your voice is heard. So you know yourself, if you're on Facebook and Instagram and you're maybe looking for, you type in gardens, you'll get a list as long as your arm because there's lots and lots of people who have created lots of pages, lots of accounts, all in your space. And what we're trying to do is make sure that the people that start to follow us are the right types of people, but actually they stay loyal to us and they come back time and time again. So our content shouldn't be the same across the board. It needs to be different. So we're touching people and engaging people in different ways. We're always trying to generate new followers. We want our pages to grow. We get to a point where for Facebook and Instagram, we really need to be over 1,000 followers to get the most engagement. And I know you're already there, but the more followers we have on the page, the richer the content becomes and the better the algorithm works for us. So we're always looking to grow those new followers. So when you're putting a post out, you might think to yourself, okay, if I put that piece of video content out with those words, is that going to get new people to follow my page? Would somebody share that? Would somebody else find that because there's the right keywords in it? So we're always thinking about how do we get new followers. We might be using it to provide some customer support. So maybe there's an open day and there's some questions that people are asking. So people might send you a direct message. You need to make sure that you're on top of that at all times. This is maybe something that Jessica does. But if people are asking questions that you're in there and you're answering them straight away, because if you leave it, 72 hours before you come back to somebody with an answer, they're off, they're away somewhere else. The world works in this very fast-paced environment. People expect an answer straight away. And then also, our competitive advantage, we should be looking at other people that are fighting for our customers. So we are trying to attract people to come and visit New Gardens. We're trying to find new garden owners to be part of our network. But actually, those people have other options and other choices. So they become your competitive landscape. And you need to be thinking about, okay, what are their choices are out there, and what are they doing with their social media? How are they making themselves stand out, and what sort of engagement are they getting? So when we're developing our strategy, so if you were developing a social media strategy for the organization or for your own purposes, those would be all of the elements that you'd want to be thinking about, and making sure that you have a way forward to answering those questions. So this slide always overwhelms me every time I have a look at it. But we live in this busy, busy, busy internet world. There's so much happening every minute of every day. There's something happening, whether it's a podcast, whether somebody's reading a review, where somebody's sending a text, they're on WhatsApp, they're on websites, they're maybe looking at a Facebook live stream, they're searching on Pinterest, they're way off on LinkedIn. They're down the rabbit hole of TikTok. There's lots and lots and lots happening. And you need to think to yourself, okay, when I'm creating this one small social media post, how do I fight against all of the stuff that's happening on the internet every minute of every day? How do I make my piece of content, my small contribution, the best it can be to make sure that I am engaging the existing followers, but I'm also finding new people to come on board and go, right, there's a new account that I could be following because actually they've got some really good content that's really rich and I'm finding it really interesting. When people are looking for social media, when they're looking for content, social media is one of the top platforms that people are actually searching for. So social media advertising, I know that's not something that you're all individually required to do, but it's maybe something you might think about overall as an organization. It's the top three element that people look for to find out about brands. So first of all, they'll go into a search engine. So they might go into Google. Now they might go into something like ChatGPT or Copilot, or they might be looking on Bing or Yahoo, and they're searching for particular things. That's still number one, but it's almost 33%. Social media advertising is picking up a huge proportion of the marketplace at 30% of people searching for brands on that platform. So we know that it's a really, really important platform. We also look at, social media comments. So it's a bit like word of mouth. People are looking at those comments because they're seeing whether that's a good garden to go to, or, whether it's open at the right times, or whether somebody else is saying, oh, you need to go here because they have the most beautiful type of whatever type of ferns or products or flowers that they're growing. So 22% of people are looking at those comments and making decisions on the back of them to find brands. So we know that it's a really important channel for us. We need to be part of that conversation. And when we think about what people are actually using social media for, they're there to find content. They're looking for articles, they're looking for videos, they're looking for images, they're looking for, content, written content. They're looking for the things that you're creating. They want to see what's being talked about. People are nosy. So, almost 30% of people are on social media because they're nosy. They want to find out what's going on. But they're also looking for products to purchase. So although you're not a sort of a purchase, people do pay an entry fee, you're still a product that people choose. So 27% of people are on social media looking for those particular gardens or things to do. 27% are looking for inspiration for things to do and buy. So we have a huge proportion of people that are ripe for your market. And then on the back of that, once they buy into your brand, the Scotland's Gardens brand, there's 22% of people that are coming back time and time again because they want to see good content from your favorite brand. So I'll come back to your site, I'll come back to your Facebook, I'll come back to your Instagram because I like your content and I want to come back time and time again. So the figures stack up, and we know that it's a really important element of our marketing strategy. But it's all about the content. So if the content is not right, we lose the customers. We don't get them in the first place. People get bored with what we're doing. People have other choices, so they maybe go somewhere else, or they're stuck in that TikTok world where they can't get out of the algorithm because they've watched one video on growing a particular plant, and before you know it, they're into forests and everything that happens with it. So if we are developing really rich, really strong content, we'll keep those customers and we'll attract new ones. So we think about content. We're always thinking about content. Everyone has a smartphone in some shape or format, and it's in your pocket 24/7. Maybe not when you're sleeping, but when you're out and about, you're doing various things on a daily basis. We should always be thinking about this content life cycle, and we think about it in the circular the circular faction. So at the top of our circle, content ideation. What makes good content for your particular customers? What's a good idea? Should I be, recording animals that are maybe hiding in the garden? Maybe there's rabbits that have made home in a wildlife part of your garden. Is that really interesting? Liz was talking earlier on about capturing content of her cats, and she's getting good engagement on Instagram because people like the cats moving about the gardens. So what are the ideas? It doesn't always have to be the same stuff all the time. We need to be coming up with fresh new things to be thinking about. We then take those ideas and we put them into some sort of a plan, because you think to yourself, okay, I'm going to put out, say, 2 posts next week. Okay, what would work best on the Tuesday post, and what would work best on the Saturday post? Well, maybe more people are coming to visit the gardens on the Saturday, so there's a garden post on the Saturday, but the Tuesday post is maybe something, a top tip, or it's maybe a question, or it's maybe a video that you've created. So we're putting that into some sort of a plan, and you don't need an elaborate piece of software to be able to do that. An Excel spreadsheet, or keep it in the notes pages on your phone. Get those ideas down in writing so you don't forget about them, because I don't know about you, but I mean, I'll maybe think about something, and the next thing I've moved on to something else, and I've totally forgot about the first thing that I do. So I need to get it into my plan. And I'm thinking about my customers, and I'm thinking, okay, that's a really good idea. When is the best time to put that out so I get the best engagement? So once I've planned it, I then start creating it. So I'm thinking about, what's the best way to develop that piece of content? Is it a video? Is it a survey or a poll? Should I be doing it as a Facebook Live? Is it a carousel post? Is it imagery? Should I be doing a voiceover? What is that piece of content, and what will that look like? Once I've done that, then I think about promoting it. So I'm not promoting it. I'm not going from ideas to promotion. I'm going around the life cycle. And if you can get into the sort of thought process around this, your content will become much, much richer, and it will become a lot more customer focused. And when we get to the promotion side of things, and we get that piece of content out on the right day, at the right time, with the right type of content, we then look at our statistics. We look at, did that post generate the comments that I was looking for? Did it generate the shares? Did anyone save it? Did we tag other people in it? Have they shared it with their followers? So I'm monitoring that to make sure it did exactly what I wanted to do in the planning stage. So we have this life cycle, and we should always be thinking about this when we're developing our content, and it should always be on your radar. Now, we're advised as social media experts to think about our content in 4 different types. So it's not all what they classify as promotional content, but we need a huge proportion of promotional content. So that might be, a garden, an open garden where somebody can come along, pay your entrance fee and come and see it. That's our promotional type content. And that should be regular. You probably want at least one of those a week. But the educational content, teach people things, give them a reason to trust you, to come back, to find out more, top tips, maybe things about, we were talking about cuttings earlier on, this time of the year, take them in when the frosts arrive. You obviously all know so much about gardens, but the customers that you're trying to engage with, the audience you're trying to engage with, maybe don't know as much as you do. So you share your knowledge, share your information, let other people, find out all the great tips and hints that you actually have and educate that audience. That really drives customer loyalty because people go, I'm going to go on that page because actually they were talking about, clippings at this time of the year. My husband's trying to grow rhubarb at the minute. What's the best way to grow rhubarb? I would be looking for that type of information. And if your Facebook or Instagram has got that sort of information, that's where I'm going to go because I know that there's lots of good hints and tips there. We then think about inspirational type content. So we want to be inspiring our audience. And this is a really good way to bring new people in. So giving them information that makes them think, wow, I didn't know that. Or is that what's coming down the line? I should really be thinking about that. Maybe there's a new type of tool that's going to come out that's going to make, it's not going to break all our backs when we're weeding our gardens or whatever it is. Inspire people, make them think, outside the box and see you as a totally different organization. And then we need a little bit of what we call our light-hearted content or our entertainment type content. So a bit about yourself. People buy from people. Bring yourself in front of the camera, bring yourself, out into the fore because people want to know a little bit about you and why you're so interested in doing what you do and make it a little bit more light-hearted. The entertainment content could be interviewing somebody who has had an open garden, catching them at the end and just asking them a couple of questions about what did it mean for them to be able to do that today, because you're then getting to know the people behind the brand. So when I'm doing that content life cycle we were talking about previously, I'm then thinking about, right, which pieces of content fit within that content life cycle. I always say to people, if you make your promotional and educational content around 60% of what you're putting out there, and then your inspirational and your educational type content around 40%, it gives you a really good balance with your content because your promotional and educational are the most important parts of your content, and the others are, content that really boosts engagement. So we want a good balance of that. And when we're coming up with content ideas, as I mentioned before, it's not always about a photograph and a piece of text, a photograph and a piece of text, photograph and a piece of text, because people do get a bit bored and they're looking for something different. There's lots of different ways that we could actually create content that's very, very engaging. So, images, really bold, striking images, great videos, short videos, longer videos, description videos, training type videos. We could be doing stories. So I'm going to show some stories that I've pulled down from some other organizations where people are telling a story that is emotional or is funny or is something that's going to capture attention. You could be doing a live stream. So you could be out in a garden, walking around a garden, and you could be actually running a Facebook or an Instagram live when you're out and about doing it. You could do a poll. You could ask people's opinion on something. You could run a quiz. You could put a survey out there. So there's lots of different things you could be using as a different format to gather attention and to get different people engaging and hooked into your content. When you think about your audience as well, so really, really think about your customer. What is it that they're actually looking for? What do they want to see? Valuable information is this educational content that we were talking about, but entertainment type content, everyone loves a laugh. Everyone loves a cry. Everybody likes something to inspire them. So they sit up and go, oh, I'm going to do something totally different. So if I think like my customers, I can then think, okay, what type of content is going to make them do something that's actually going to engage with my particular post. And then we select the platforms where our audience actually spend their time. So I know as an organization, you've chosen Facebook and Instagram, which if you ask me, previously, where would you go? I think they're probably your two key platforms. But, we have got such a choice of platforms out there. And what a lot of organizations do is they use other platforms to drive people to their Facebook and their Instagram. So you might put content on TikTok, but actually the home of that content is Instagram and you're wanting to bring more people to your Instagram. So there is an opportunity to use other types of digital channels to push people to your existing channels. But we must always tailor our content to each platform. So our audience, and I'm going to share some statistics on our audience, but our audience on Facebook are generally older. our audience on Instagram are generally younger. So putting out exactly the same content on all your platforms all the time is going to lose some momentum as well. So we want to be thinking differently, maybe slightly differently about our Facebook content to our Instagram content. I know it's more work for us, but if we're trying to hook and engage people, we need to really think about that, particularly when you look at that, 1 minute of every minute of every day, people are on the internet, and you need to make sure that your content is going to engage them the best that we can. So I said at the beginning, I was going to be talking about algorithms, and you've probably read about them. So each of the social media platforms are driven by an algorithm. Facebook and Instagram are owned by Meta, so it's pretty much the same algorithm that runs the both of those platforms. But actually, we want to make sure we play the algorithm game. So if I'm saying to somebody about developing a website, I always say to them, right, we want to be making sure we're talking to Google, we're talking to Bing, and we're talking to, AI platforms. For social media, we're wanting to be making sure we're talking to Meta. And we're trying to drive people, that our audiences to write comments on our posts, share our posts, save our posts, and watch our videos and reels to the end. So if we think about those four things every single time we create a piece of social media content, if you're just putting a picture out there and there's nothing, there's no words that go with it, or there's no call to action on it, or there's no reason for somebody to make a comment on it, you're not going to drive engagement. So we're looking for ways for people to engage with that particular post. We also want to make content that stops the scroll. People don't ignore good content, but they will just scroll past bad content. So if your images are fuzzy, or your videos are shaky, or the sound's not right on them, people will just scroll on and they'll go on to the next one. We want to make sure we've got a really strong hook in the first 3 seconds or the first line of our post. So if you read a newspaper article, the headline is the thing that catches you. So what is it about that statement that makes you want to read more? You're thinking about this when you're creating your hook. We want really bold visuals. So if you're taking pictures in a garden, what is it about that garden that really stands out? So Liz was mentioning earlier on that there's some photographers, volunteers, which is absolutely amazing, and you'll get this totally. But what is it about that particular image that's going to make somebody go, oh, wow. So you're always looking for that strong, bold visual that's going to make somebody not scroll past your social media post. Or we're maybe thinking about relatable or emotional storytelling. So obviously we're raising money to fund some charities. There's great stories to be told of why people, need to come into the garden on the back of, their particular charity that they're aligned with. So those stories of the people that you're supporting at the end of the day really do touch something in somebody's heart. And that's really good content, because that's the type of thing that generates shares, comments, saves, likes, whatever it is that we're trying to do. We want to make sure we're focusing on relevance. So don't talk about things that aren't relevant to your community. There might be things that sit on the periphery, but actually we want to be talking to our audiences and making sure we're sharing the right types of information with our audience, using language, words, topics that they really care about. If they're really sort of driven by biodiversity, talk to them about, maybe some examples of things that you've seen that are really good examples of that. Really engage the customers with the right type of language, because we need to remember that people are searching for keywords on these social media channels. So we're not just using it as a promotional tool to tell people about our gardens. People are actually searching for key things. So if our keywords are right, we can ensure that we're picking up on the searches that people are using the social media for, because it's a search channel as well as a promotional channel. The other thing to think about is if you've put out a social media post and it's done really, really well, and you've got good comments, or you've got good shares or saves, and you think to yourself, actually, that I'm quite proud of that. Pat myself on the back. That was a really good post. Turn it into something else. So it might be that the first time you did it, it was a piece of video content and it didn't have a voiceover on it. And you think, oh, actually, it did get good engagement. Could I go back in and put a voiceover on top of it and make it more engaging and help tell that story? So I'm thinking about a good piece of social media content that's in my plan, but I've put it out this week. Well, maybe I'm going to put it out again in 2 weeks' time because not everybody sees the content that you put out the first time. And if you're tweaking it, maybe making it shorter, maybe changing the first 3 seconds of it, whatever it is that you're trying to do to it, you're improving that piece of content, but you know that you're going to get good engagement on it. So, resharing that is a good way of doing it. If you go into Facebook, sometimes if you share a reel, it'll also ask you when you're scheduling it, do you want to share this as a story? Share it as a story because some people will only look at your stories and some people will be searching for reels. So you've got two different audiences that you want to try and engage as much as possible. I was talking about keywords. So keywords are really, really important. And I'm sure Jessica can probably give you some help around the types of keywords that people are searching for across the social media channels. But think of those keywords. So when you create your video or you create your imagery, don't just save it onto your phone or don't just save it onto your laptop and call it JPEG 1 and MP4 4 or MP4 3. Give it an actual name and think about the keywords. So what am I, as your audience, searching for on social media to find your offer? Think about those keywords and use that to name that video. We're also maybe going to put some of those keywords in our captions or our subtitles that we're going to add to our social media posts, and the alt descriptions. So alt descriptions are really important. You'll again get penalized by a lot of the social media channels if you're not adding them. So they're descriptive descriptions, that's the word, informative descriptions of what somebody's seeing when they're looking at an image or they're looking at a series of images or they're watching a video post. But it's a great way to get some keywords in there as well. And think about the social media platforms as a search engine. So we want to make sure that we're capturing the audiences that are searching for the things that we're putting out there. So they're probably the 5 most important things to be considering when I'm creating my social media content to drive that engagement. So a couple of examples of really good performing content that went out on the National Garden Scheme. So I picked their site. So obviously I didn't want to pick on anybody that was going to be on the webinar today. So the post on the left-hand side, the first one, had 776 likes and 33 comments. It's had good engagement, but why? So it was shared by this guy, Mike SQW, who's got 37.1 thousand followers. He's an influencer in himself. He's obviously, really into gardens, but why has that post done really, really well? Well, it's a picture with people in it. So if you look at your posts of just gardens with just images of plants in it, and you look at posts where you've got images of people in them or you've maybe got a video content, the ones with people in it or animals in it are going to get a hell of a lot more engagement than you are just pictures of gardens. There's things in this post that make me want to do it. People are in it, they're smiling, they're looking at the camera, the umbrella draws the eye, it's got really good lighting, the background's been thought about, it's nice and tidy, everything looks good behind it. There's a cute picture of a dog, which always drives engagement. And they've also tagged a couple of people in the post. So they've collaborated with Wiltshire NGS and the National Garden Scheme. So that is the reason that post is done so well. They've not just taken a picture of a garden and stuck it up there. They've really thought about, what do I want to get? How do I get that post to maximize the engagement? The second one that is the Big British Garden Survey post. Why is it working? Right, it's relevant content. People are interested. It's all about biodiversity and finding out about the wildlife in your garden. It's a very simple image, but it's bright and it's colourful and it's engaging, and your eyes are drawn to the little butterfly sitting on top of the purple flower. The audience are genuinely interested in the outcomes of that survey. So you've got some very passionate people that really want to see that survey bit, the happening and the results they're going to get out of it. And everyone's got an opinion, so they're more than happy to share it with their followers. So they had 141 likes on it and 10 comments on it and 144 shares. 144 shares. So for one simple post, they've got really good engagement. So we can see, the types of content that are getting the best types of engagement from doing it effectively. So we've put in a bit of a do's and a don'ts around creating content. When you're actually creating content, on the do list, think about what you want the post to do. So don't just take a photograph and pop it up there with some nice words. Think about what you want that post to actually do. And if it's just an information piece of content and you're really just trying to, make people think, that's fine because that's a bit of brand awareness. But really think about what you want the post to do. Tailor the content to the audience and the platform that you're creating it for. So if you're creating video content on Instagram, you need to think about some formats, and I'll share them with you in a second. Use clear, high quality visuals, no fuzzy visuals. It's something that's very, very strong, striking, bold colors that we were talking about earlier on. Keep your messages focused and easy to scan. Don't write screeds and screeds and screeds. Particularly on Instagram, our audience on Instagram are younger. They're not interested in reading lots and lots of content. So we want to make it punchy, straight into the point. Bullet points work really, really well if you're trying to get multiple pieces of information across. We want to try and provide your value through education, entertainment, or insight. So we're always thinking, are we educating our audience? Are we entertaining them? Are we giving them some insight? So back to those types of content we want to create. Use accurate information and credit sources. So if you're quoting somebody, so say it was the results of that survey, I'm going to be using the information that comes out that survey and I'm going to be crediting it. So people know it's come from an authoritative source and they're trusting that particular brand. We want to encourage comments, shares, and responses. So tell people, in the comments, tell us what you think about such and such. So you're making people actually do something. And then always look at your insights. Look at, how much engagement that particular post got. Did it work? Did it not work? Why did it work? Why did it not work? So I'm always looking at my insights to think, okay, that campaign or that particular post or that video has really done what it's supposed to do. And on the other side are don'ts. Don't post without a clear purpose. So, if we know what we want our post to do, then we're not posting without a purpose. Don't use the same content everywhere without adapting it. So if I'm always posting the same posts to Facebook and Instagram, I'm losing my audience because my audiences are different. Don't publish blurry images, cluttered or hard to read content. Don't overload posts with too many ideas or hashtags. Don't make every post overly promotional. Don't copy content or make unsupported claims. So don't steal somebody else's content. You can take an idea from someone else, but make it your own. Because your brand is different. And don't ignore audience engagement. If somebody asks you a question on social media, go back and answer it. Or if somebody says something looks absolutely beautiful, even go back and like it or heart it so people know that you like the piece of content that they've actually spent time or that comment that they've spent time doing. And don't rely on likes or vanity metrics. Aim for real engagement. So likes in years gone by were a good measurement, but not anymore. We're really looking for comments, we're really looking for shares, and we're looking for saves on the likes of Instagram. So if we think about those do's and don'ts, that will help us sort of shape our content to make sure it's targeting the right audience. So we live in a world where video gets much more engagement than still images. And I see on your social media that there's a mix of content that's been created. Some people take some beautiful photographs and they put them together and they put some music over the top of it. So we've got some moving imagery. Some other people are actually interviewing people or making physical videos of them walking about the gardens and talking about various different things. But if we want to get the most out of our marketing, we need to be thinking about this video content, this moving content that drives the best engagement from our audience. So still images and a piece of text no longer really cuts the mustard. We've got to be thinking about this video content. People will choose a video over an image every single time. So it boosts interaction. It's prioritized in the algorithms we were talking about earlier on. They really, really like video content. So you'll notice that from your insights, if you put videos out there, you'll get much better engagement statistics than you will if you're putting out just a still image. It boosts your search ranking. It's really engagement through narrative because obviously you've got a voiceover on it and it's on the go access. So I notice even now when I'm doing webinars for the likes of Business Gateway, the people that I deal with, the first thing they'll say to me is, Anne-Marie, will you make me a video that talks about that workshop and what people are going to get out of it? Because that's the first thing that they want because they know that that'll drive engagement. So your phone we're not looking for anything fancy. You don't need to have a big fancy DLR camera. You can take really good video content on your phone. You don't need anything else. So why do we think video? So a couple of statistics that sort of back up that evidence. People are watching an average 17 hours of online video per week. I actually think my son's watching 17 hours of online video every 2 days because he's constantly on his phone. So that younger demographic generation, so he's 20, he's always watching video content, but lots more people are engaging with it. So I do a lot of work on LinkedIn, and CEOs are getting more out of videos than they are out of written content. So we know our audience wants video content. Facebook's got over 8 billion daily video views. 66% of viewers, of consumers, find short form videos the most engaging type of content. So we're not looking for 20-minute videos. We're looking for short, sharp, 30-second, 45-second, 60-second pieces of videos. And here's something that's really important. If you're creating a piece of video content, think of posting it as a reel. So rather than just putting it out as a video on your timeline, on your wall, stick it out as a reel, because a reel goes to everybody on Facebook or Instagram that wants to find it. So when we were talking about keywords earlier on, so if somebody's searching for, say, biodiversity, and I put a reel up about biodiversity in East Renfrewshire, that's going to come up on somebody's search feed, and they're more likely to watch my video than they would a still image. So I'm capturing that audience out with my existing followers. And when we were talking earlier on, right at the beginning, when we were setting our goals, we said one of our measurements is about growing our followers. So this is a really good way to reach new people, to get new people into the gardens, or to get new people that will go, I want to showcase, show my garden. We want to reach those followers. So reels are a really good way of doing that. And we think about our video doing, 3 key things to build the customer relationships. The reels are helping us get to those new customers. And then what we're trying to do is pull them into this funnel. So once they watch that reel, we want them to like us. We're gonna showcase what we're all about through that reel. So they start to go, I really like that content. That person seems really friendly, or that garden's absolutely beautiful and they've got some fantastic plants on it. Whatever it is that they like, I'm increasing my brand appeal, and then I'm pulling somebody in because I want them then to go follow that page, engage with that post, leave a comment, and I'm trusting. I'm developing trust with that particular individual. So I'm pulling people into my funnel because that's where I'm going to grow and engage my followers. This is sort of the technical stuff, and as we were talking earlier on that Jess is going to share the slides afterwards. But there's things to think about when you're creating video content, because the format in Instagram is slightly different to the format in Facebook. If you're creating a video that you think could work on both platforms, I would make it in the Instagram format and then share it to Facebook, because it'll work on Facebook, but it won't work the other way around. So 4 to 5 grid post, and always do them portrait. They work best in portrait mode for Facebook and Instagram. The ideal length for Instagram is 15 to 30 seconds. I mean, it's nothing. So you've got to really think about, okay, how do I get across what I'm trying to showcase in 30 seconds? I mean, it's no time at all. And if you can do that, you'll get between 60 and 70% engagement. If you're doing a reel, maybe you could be considering something up to 90 seconds, 1 hour on your feed, 60 seconds on stories. So there's different maximum lengths that you can get, but where people get the most engagement is on the short form videos. For Facebook, videos that perform best are 50 to 60 seconds long. So because it's a slightly older audience, they've got more time and they'll watch a slightly longer piece of content, as long as that content's interesting to the end. I mean, if you're just making it 60 seconds for the sake of making it 60 seconds, don't make it 40 seconds or make it 30 seconds. So make it as short as possible. So you'll get this this information. And when you're making video, there's a couple of things that I use when I'm making videos that I just think makes my life so much better and makes my videos so much better. I have a selfie stick. A lot of people get them in Christmas crackers these days, so you might find you've got one lying about your house. And I've invested in a Bluetooth microphone because I'm going to be interviewing people. I want the sound to be really, really good. I want to be able to capture their voice. particularly when you're outside, because you're competing against a lot of stuff that's happening in the background. You know, it might be an open garden and there might be people milling about, etc. So having a little Bluetooth microphone, it just connects to your phone, you pop it onto the lapel, you put one on yourself, particularly if you're doing an interview, and then you're gathering the best sound that you can possibly get. So those two things are the most important thing. But I also think good lighting. So if you're taking content inside, really think about the lighting. Outside, you don't want people squinting into the sun. You don't want the sun in the back of their head, you know, because then you'll get a shadow on your videos. So think about the lighting. Look at it through your phone lens, and you'll see what works in terms of really good lighting. We were looking at those two guys with the dog. You know, the lighting's perfect in it, and somebody's really thought about where's the best place to make that piece of video content. And when you're uploading it, you know, you're thinking about background music, but don't just put something that's really boring. Really think about the music. The music really counts. And sometimes the music is the thing that makes people actually watch a video. And there's some tools that you can use to edit that piece of video content. And, you know, I run video creation courses for Business Gateway. And people come in at the beginning and they'll say to me, "Oh, I can't do this. I'm not putting myself in front of camera. I don't know, you know, I don't even want my voice on it, blah, blah, blah." And by the end of it, they're all making videos because they realize how important they are. And they're using little tools like CapCut or InShot, which are free apps that you can have on your phone just to edit those pieces of content down. So those are the things that you're going to need. So telling stories is really important. So I was talking earlier on about really good pieces of content. I'm hoping that everybody can hear this, but this is a video from the National Gardens website, and it's really compelling, and you do want to watch it to the end. So it's not a short piece of video content, but the guy is telling his story.
My name is Mo Bilal. Prior to my accident, I was a consultant.
Hopefully everybody can hear that.
After
If
my
not, you can read
accident,
it.
a bit of a delay. I made it back as a surgeon dealing with patients with injury, as well as being a trustee of the Horatio Gardens. A cold February day, I went out cycling with a friend. Out of nowhere, a tree fell as I was cycling by. The next thing I remember is waking up and trying to get up, and it was that moment I realized I was paralyzed. The garden was actually a sanctuary. On the one hand, you were having intense therapy in the hospital, very sterile. And they allowed that sort of contrast with me coming out into the gardens, into nature. And every time I felt upset, I'd actually go out in the gardens and always came back much happier. As a surgeon, I spent an enormous time in the service of others. But actually, what I realized was coming back, I had an opportunity and I was given a second chance. I wanted to impact people on a greater level. It brings a smile to my face to be able to come back.
So that piece of content, you know, we heard a story. It's not a long story, but actually you want to watch it because you know that there's something really valuable in there. That content has been made on a phone. It's not something that's been done professionally. You know, and it's come across really, really, really good. So you can just imagine when you create a story like that somebody's going to go, "Oh, what an amazing story. Isn't it fantastic to see that guy has come back to be a surgeon? Isn't it amazing that the garden has given him his inspiration?" You know, so there's lots of emotion in that particular story that's going to make the engagement, you know, it's going to really drive engagement and make people come back and comment on it and do things. Oh, there's other things that you could be thinking about. You know, there could be things like demonstrations of people of things people can do that are nature based. This isn't quite garden stuff. I couldn't find one, but I was sort of thinking about, you know, making a mini Christmas wreath or making a beautiful flower decoration for your table. You know, so there's not even anybody in this picture. It's just a set of hands. Good music, you know, it's interactive, it's making somebody do something, and you're compelled to watch it to the end because there's so much happening in it. Totally simple, but totally effective. You know, simple pieces of video that's going to make a customer actually do something, and somebody from your audience actually do something. The other thing you could be thinking about is, you know, asking questions, getting the opinions of the people to share their thoughts, their ideas, you know, to drive comments and drive shares. You know, I've just put up a question. This may not be 100% right, but how did you get involved in Scotland's garden scheme? You know, how did they get involved in the first place? So that might go out to all your garden owners, and you'd be encouraging. You could tag some people in that and encourage them to actually start telling how they got involved in the first place. It could be a question. I've heard a few questions where people have asked, you know, do I have to have a really large garden to be part of the scheme? You know, so there's lots of things that you could be asking questions about and getting people to share and make opinions, as opposed to just always sharing photographs of content. User-generated content. So this is content generated by the people that are your followers, you know, the people that actually, you know, I've got something to say. It's a really authentic way to market your brand, and it'll get much better engagement, 50% higher engagement than content that you're putting out as an organization. So 80% of consumers say user-generated content impacts their decision. It's a bit like reading reviews. You know, if you go onto Amazon and you have a look at something and you think, oh, I quite like the look of that, that looks really good. The first thing you do is you go and have a look at the reviews, because you actually want information from real people talking about, yeah, that pen was really good and it glided really, really well, or whatever it is. So, you know, getting your followers to create their own user-generated content is a really rich way of generating content. You know, so you could even be getting your garden owners to do an interview and ask and share information about their own gardens and the shrubs, what's in bloom, maybe biodiversity that's relevant to them, to drive those conversations, sharing their opinions, sharing their information, sharing their advice. You know, they could be in their own garden, they could be talking about the wildlife or the insects. It'll get much more engagement than just a still image, but it's also a really rich way to give back to the audiences. So I'm going to now look at, particularly at Instagram and Facebook as your two channels. Instagram's audience profile, as I mentioned earlier on, is slightly younger. So if you look at the statistics, the biggest majority of audience on Instagram are between 18 and 34. The 35 to 44 bracket is growing quite rapidly because a lot of people have moved over from Facebook to Instagram, because Instagram's more visually appealing. Audiences are moving away from Facebook and moving on to Instagram. And I think Facebook's become very advertising dominated. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but sometimes I look at my feed and I have to switch it off because it's just full of ads. So that is putting a huge proportion of the audience off. And I think if we look at the statistics, maybe in another 12 to 18 months time, that will have shifted quite significantly and a lot more people will be moving on to Instagram. So when you're creating content, think Instagram first, because that's where most of the audience are going to be coming to. So we want to be thinking about creating content that's got a purpose. So that's really the theme of today is, really think about what you're trying to do with your social media content. So we're doing reels, as we mentioned before. So why are we doing them? We want to reach non-followers, people that aren't following our page. We maybe want to convert new followers. So somebody that's maybe found us through keywords, and a reel is the way that they're going to look at that piece of video content and go, yeah, there's some good information here. I'm going to follow that page. We're going to use them to build trust with that audience, so we want them to like our brand and to talk about our brand and share our brand. And we want to increase our reach and views. So reels are a really good way of doing that. Images. So we still want to be creating images. We don't want to just, exclude that altogether. They're good for snackable content, small things that we're trying to share that we just want to grab attention quickly. So we might have a picture of an absolutely beautiful, bright, pink flower that's going to gather attention with a butterfly sitting on top of it. That's really good snackable content. You might be creating infographics. So an infographic is a good way of telling a story about something. So maybe it's about, maybe we do an infographic on the number of, the increase in the number of butterflies in the Scottish borders over the last 2 years or whatever it is, a nice infographic that sort of shows the statistics and how that's grown. Pictures of yourself, images are good for like photographs of you or maybe your garden owners. And they're also faster and quicker to create because sometimes you just don't have the time. You know, a video does take time. It's not something you can do in a whim. And quite often, if I'm making video content, I'm not just recording it and putting it out there straight away. I'm editing it, and the editing can take maybe, you know, half an hour to an hour to actually make sure I've you know, I've cut it down, I've added the music, you know, I've made sure that you know, I'm maybe snipping up my content, and making sure it flows properly. Carousels are another really good platform, a really good piece of content, and that's like a series of images that you put together to tell a story. So you might have 5 slides that go back to back, talking about something in particular. They're good for bonding with the audience because somebody will go from the first one to the second one to the third one, as long as it builds up and it really tells that story. They're good for the educational type of content we were talking about earlier on. You know, active consumption, somebody has to do something. They have to swipe to get on to the next one. And they're good for conversion rates. You know, you can drive a big audience through carousel posts. And then we have stories. So our stories are the things that come up on our feed. So people quite often ignore the story side of things, but sometimes, you know, if you're looking at Instagram on your phone, it's the stories that you see all the time, you know, and if your stories are telling a good story, you're pulling a good audience in. So that's good for building that community, you know. So the user-generated content would be good shared on your stories. Maybe selling the tickets to new gardens that you're opened. It could be sparking conversations in DM. So a lot of people use stories for lead generation, for actually getting people to, you know, selling particular products and services. So they are good for that. We think about timings as well. So I think that's a really hard thing to sort of, you know, you're not one to stick a finger in the air and actually pick a time. You've got to really think about, when are your customers online? When are you going to get that best engagement? So according to MetaSuite, 7 o'clock is a really good time for Instagram at nighttime. But what I would be saying is, look at your statistics. When are your audience, you know, making their shares and their comments and their saves and things like that? Is that at a particular time of the day where you're getting your best engagement? If you use MetaSuite and you use the planner tool in it, it will quite often, it'll recommend the time that your audience are engaging. So, you know, use that statistics, because they've built that based on your particular type of content. You've probably heard of Instagram influencers. You know, they've got quite a lot of influencers on Instagram and also on TikTok. This is about finding people that actually have big followings that can help grow your audience and grow your engagement. So in this day and age, we focus on micro influencers. So we're not looking for Kim Kardashian or Beyonce or Alan Titchmarsh. You know, they're never going to share our content, although as much as we'd love them to, or maybe if he's your best friend, he might do something like that. But if we think about these micro influencers, people who've got between 10 and 100,000 followers, they're really good people to be engaging with if we can get them into our community. Them sharing their post will really boost our audience, a bit like the 2 guys with the dog earlier on. So this is an influencer. They're not quite in your space. They're called Building a Food Forest Scotland, and it's a lady with an autistic son, and she's talking about, you know, she teaches him at home, and he's out in the garden with her. But then she makes some really good pieces of video content. So nice piece of video content, really good music. She's got 45,000 followers. I've been on her website, and, you know, she's an influencer and she charges a couple of £100 if people want to do engagement with her. So it's maybe something you think about as an organization, but you're looking for people like that. Some people don't charge. Some people are just looking for profile raising and, you know, sharing of communities. So every influencer is different in terms of what they want to get out of it, but you want to be looking for people that, you know, that can help, you know, raise your profile and get you in front of new audiences. The other thing that's really interesting about that piece of video is at the beginning, we were talking about the hook in the first 3 seconds of your video. So you had 2 kids running down the big hill on some snow. So that doesn't necessarily relate to the rest of the video, but it's a good hook because you watch that and you think, oh, that's really cute. I want to watch more. So they're really thinking about their 3-second hook. Okay, so now we're going to look at Facebook. About 38 million people in the UK were active users of Facebook in early 2026. So it's still a massive platform, and the average user spends about 30 minutes on Facebook every day. Facebook says its biggest age group is 25 to 34-year-olds, but actually the people that engage more on Facebook are in the older demographics, probably 50 plus. It's a big platform for females, and video content's generating more more engagement, so 59% more engagement than other formats. And the stories are reaching about 500 million users daily. So again, a really important channel, a really good one to reach that slightly older audience. What type of content works the best on Instagram? On Facebook. Images. So we're talking about still images earlier on. They're best for, you know, general, trying to get something across. The carousel posts, because we get that engagement and we tell a story and we pull people into that conversation. And then the video content, very similar to Instagram, but again, it's best for showcasing what you're all about and pulling people and keeping people on your page for longer. Consistency is really important on Facebook. You know, the sort of the general statistics say we need to be aiming for at least 3 posts per week. And I know you all sort of cumulatively post on the one page, but we want to make sure that there's enough content going out to keep the engagement going. We don't want to be doing too much, but we don't want to be doing too little. So we want a mix of content. So it's not always the same content all the time, but we might want to be thinking about things like polls, user-generated content. That works really, really well on Facebook. We want to make sure we time our posts correctly. So Meta recommends 6 p.m. in the evening as the most popular time to post on Facebook. But again, have a look at your statistics, have a look at your engagement, and really think about when's the best time to put that out there. And don't just put it out because you're on Facebook at a particular time or you're on Meta doing a plan. You know, you've got the ability to schedule, so schedule at the right time. And keep an eye on your statistics, you know, really get on top of who's doing what, where and when. You might find that there's particular people that share across Facebook and Instagram on a regular basis. Get to know these people, you know, understand what type of content that they like and what type of content that they want to share. The more you know about those people, if they're good advocates of your brand, the better engagement you're going to get to different audiences. So I mentioned at the beginning, I would give you some tools. Jess has got these slides. They're all hyperlinked, but these are some of the things that I use. So Canva is a great wee tool for creating social media posts. If you're not using it, get on it. You can use it for free. The paid for version's slightly better, but the free version still gives you ability to do lots of things. There's some image sites on there if you haven't got any imagery. If you need some design work done, fiverr.com. And then I've got some analytics type tools on there for like things like keywords, hashtag searches. We've got the 2B video editing apps that we were talking about. Sometimes just having a planner tool, you know, I was saying earlier on about content creation and content planning. Hootsuite and HubSpot both have free tools that you could use. Linktree is a link accumulator tool. So maybe if you're putting a post out and you're trying to send people to 2 or 3 different call to actions, you can have a Linktree, and then that's just one link that somebody goes to. And then you can send them out. A QR code's the same way to do that. You know, you could have a QR code. But remember, if you're putting a QR code out on something that's on social media, people can't scan a QR code because they're already on their phone. QR codes are better for things like posters. And then social media scheduling tools. So I know you're all using Meta, but there's a couple of other alternatives there if Meta doesn't work for you. So a couple of the trends we need to be aware of that I've covered this afternoon. Short form video rules. So don't be putting out really, really long videos. If you're making videos, make them short and punchy, put them out as reels, and try and really think about your first 3 seconds, to gather that hook. people are searching for brands on Facebook and Instagram. So think about your keywords. Your keywords are key. Make sure you're putting them in as your descriptions. Make it authentic. You know, people want real content from real people. They want to see the people behind the brand. You know, they want to get yourself out there. That's the type of content that's going to get the best engagement. And then that sort of positions you as that trusted authority. And you've got an amazing community. Build on it. Get to know some of the people. Get them actually doing some of the work for you. Get them to be creating some of that user-generated content, and really work with them to maximize the most out of your social media. So that's me. That's the end of the presentation. I'm going to take it off share, and I think we've got some questions. There seem to be a few in the chat.
Well, can I just first of all say thank you so
Yeah.
much, Anna Marie. That was just so packed full of information, and I've been scribbling away, even though you have provided the slides, but it's given me lots of ideas as well. I know, Jess, you've been keeping an eye on the questions, haven't you?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Anna. Marie, just to start off from Aideen, she's got a question about hashtags on Instagram. So she's asking, she'd love to know more about what hashtags you should be using on Instagram.
So I would be looking at what are the hashtags that are generating the most engagement. So have a look back through some of the hashtags that have been used previously and see what people are sharing for. You'd need to do a little bit of search. Maybe this is something you could help with, Jess, is do a bit of search on some of them and pull out some of the ones that they're getting the best engagement. Instagram used to be basically run on hashtags. So they would they'd be saying, you know, put in 30 hashtags per Instagram post. But in this day and age, you probably only need maybe 4 or 5 key hashtags, but think about the hashtag for the type of content you're putting out. So there might be, you know, there might be 10 that you use overall, but actually only 3 or 4 of them are relevant for the particular post. There's a little tool called Hashtagify Me that I've used, and it's a really good way to find hashtags. So if you are looking for some hashtags, that's maybe something that you could have a wee look at.
Thank you. And we've got another one from Aileen here. So she's saying on Facebook, what's the benefit of putting a URL link into the comments rather than in the post itself?
So if you do it in the post, you can't make it clickable. So if the visual side has a URL in it, it's not clickable. So you need to put it into the comments so that people can actually click on it. Because obviously your link is where you're trying to drive somebody to. So that might be to a website, or it might be to something that maybe somebody's going to purchase, like Stripe or something like that. So you want to make sure it's in there so people can actually click on it.
That's super, thank you. And question from Liz with the orange video. How would you set that up for filming? Was it a tripod you think they used for that?
Yeah, I think they probably will. They'll have some sort of selfie stick with. So my selfie stick, I haven't got it here with me actually, but it's got feet on it. So I bought it on Amazon. I think it cost me £25. So I didn't spend a lot of money on it, but it's got feet on it, and then it's got a tilting head on it, which means I can put my camera anywhere. So I can put it with my hands, I can put it on my face, I can, take it with me when I'm out and about and moving. So buy one that's got the sort of, buy a proper selfie stick if you're purchasing one, and you've got flexibility. I quite like that wee video. It's good. Yeah.
Thank you. And a question from Carolyn here. She's asking, what about threads for longer form posts?
You have a Threads account?
Yes, I think you were saying you do, Carolyn. Nod of the head there. Yes, she
Right.
does.
So you've got a Threads account. Yeah, Threads for longer form posts, or sometimes even YouTube if it's video content, if you're wanting people to engage. I mean, I did put some statistics in it, so you can put slightly longer videos on the likes of Facebook and Instagram. They'll maybe not get so much engagement. I quite often encourage people to do lives. So, if you're maybe training somebody up on something, or you're maybe giving an education around something, try and not get people to leave your account. Because if you take them to lots of other different accounts, you're dispersing your audience even wider. So if Facebook and Instagram is where we want to be, I would try and keep them on Instagram and Facebook as much as I possibly can. But a LinkedIn Live Facebook Live or an Instagram Live is a really good way around that, rather than trying to take them to Threads. But if you've already started to build an audience on Threads, then absolutely.
Perfect, thank you. And a question from Callum. He's asking, do you recommend tailoring content for different age groups? And if so, in what kind of content would you recommend is likely to reach under 40s compared with an existing older gardening audience?
That's a really good question. I'm not a mad gardener, so I might be looking for some help from Liz and Jess on this one. But it's more to do with, the music you pick for your younger audience, for your under 40, should be different to the music you pick for your older audience. We think about our captions, we think about our statements, for a younger audience will watch, they're looking for more speeded up content, they're looking for things quick and easy, they're very busy people. So, that sort of quick, short, really punchy, engaging content, whereas somebody who's maybe slightly older is a bit more relaxed, a bit more laid back, and you can be a bit more, descriptive in your content. You can do it a little bit longer. So I think it's different styles for that particular audience, but I'm not sure whether, there's different types of plants and different types of gardens that might suit younger audiences than they would for older audiences. Was that's a question back to Liz and Jess? You would know that.
I think people like transformations. If you
Right,
see
okay.
before and after.
Yeah.
I think, and obviously that's not a quick thing in real life, is it? But
No.
I think people like to, it feels quick, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's an interesting point. We've got you talked about micro influencers, and we've got a couple of people that do share our stuff, and we've actually got some garden owners, one garden owner in particular, who's got a very good following on Instagram, and she very much had a before and after. That's a lot of the stuff that she's done, a really tiny garden. But it's amazing to see when she was sharing the fact that she was opening her garden for us, the impact it had on our account
Yeah.
and the big inrush of followers.
Absolutely. So you're looking for more people like that. And again, if you're picking an influencer, if you're looking for those 40-year-olds, I'd pick an influencer that talks to that particular target audience. But if you're picking an influencer for the larger, sorry, the older demographics, pick somebody that aligns to that to particular audience as well.
Thank you. I've just had a comment from Neil as well, who's saying he's noticed an increased interest from younger people who are relating more to eco-friendly wildlife gardening as well, which is great. It's something that we're noticing as well, becoming more and more popular.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I mean, I was in Edinburgh with my son a couple of weeks ago and we walked through the meadows and, I thought, he's 20 years of age and I thought he's never going to want to walk up through all the cherry blossom trees. But he's like that, Mum, come and see this. It's absolutely stunning. And I thought that's really interesting. 20 years of age, he's interested in that type of thing. But we were looking at all the butterflies that were flying over to it and the bees and things like that. And, he was pointing out all of that. So again, I said at the beginning, it's about thinking like your audience. If you really understand the type of person that you're trying to engage with a particular post or a particular series of posts, make your content suit that audience and you'll get much, much better, much higher engagement.
Super. I had a super quick question as well about anyone that's wanting to do a Facebook Live or Instagram Live. Is there a sort of a rough time scale that you would say is kind of a good point for engagement? So, for example, is it a minute or 5 minutes, or how long's too long for
I
that?
think it depends on what the content's going to be about. If you're actually if it's a training type video or tutorial type video, they can be longer. But if you're just maybe taking somebody through a garden, that would be shorter. I think it would really depend on the type of content. I think what people forget when they're doing lives is to actually promote them. So,
Sure.
so you might say 2 days, 3 days in advance. Don't forget, we're going to be taking you around such and such a garden next Tuesday. We're starting off at 11 o'clock in the morning. Make sure you join us, and then you tell people that that's actually going to happen because you can't guarantee your audience is going to be online at that particular time.
Thank you. And just a note from Neil as well, who's saying we've had numbers of views between 150 and 15,000. We couldn't work out why, but your presentation has answered our question. Can't wait to put some of your advice into practice. So a big thank you from Neil there.
Amazing. Good.
And just a final one from Callum on the comments. So are AI search tools like ChatGPT and Google AI changing what small organizations should be doing online, or do the basic search engine optimization principles still apply?
No, it's all changed. So we
Yeah.
need to be thinking of SEO and AIO now. When I'm working with companies, not so much in social media, more on, I would say, web content and digital content. So like maybe digital advertising and things like that. Social media is a search engine in itself. But if you want to start appearing on the likes of Google Gemini or ChatGPT and things like that, you've got to really be thinking about how do you optimize for those particular platforms. So if you're thinking about ChatGPT and you want to appear there, you need to be aligning with Bing. And people think it's all about Google when it's not anymore. It's things like putting frequently asked questions on your website. So this is where you guys can help Jess and Liz by actually feeding in some of the questions that you're hearing when you're out and about, because actually those are the types of things that people are searching for on ChatGPT or Google Gemini, and they should be then sitting on the website to pull that audience in and shared, across social media as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Anna Marie. Just a couple more minutes if there's anybody else that has any questions before we round off. Everybody's got anything else they'd like to ask?
Well, I would just like to say thank you so much to everybody for coming and for all your questions. I mean, I think we could just go on and on and on because we've started, and it would be really nice maybe to do something else in the future. We could pick any one of these slides or topics and we could do videos, we could do lives, we could do all sorts. And I think maybe we'll, do let us know, actually, everybody, if you've enjoyed this, if there are any particular elements you might be interested in the future. And we will share this with our other social media volunteers, and we've got garden owners here as well. I think one thing we have got going for us definitely is the fact that what we do is really authentic. We are our own audience because we're all garden lovers. Personally, I think it's a joy going through Instagram or social media, garden social media, because it's not doom scrolling. It's lovely content, isn't it? So it's really good, but it's nice to think actually how we can make it better.
Definitely. Video is key, and get more comfortable with it. And, sometimes you think at the beginning, oh my God, I can never make a video and I don't want to be on a video and I don't like the way I look and my hair's looking awful this morning and all that. Nobody cares. Honestly, nobody cares what you look like. I've got a Northern Ireland accent. Nobody cares what I sound like. You've got to get over that whole burden of, I don't want to be putting myself in front of a camera, because actually people are interested in what you've got to say. It's all about the content. So really think like your customer. If I'm writing content or if I'm putting together a web page, I actually take myself out my seat and I go around the other side of the desk and I think, what does that customer want to know? And if you think like that with your social media, particularly for your video content, you'll make really rich video content. But good luck.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you so much. I hope maybe we'll get you back sometime. I think that was really brilliant. Thanks so much to all of you for coming, and I can see appreciation in the chat here.
Yeah.
But
thank you.
Thanks very much to everybody. Nice to see you all.
Take a bow.